Hey everybody, it's Qcknd, and today I wanted to do like a story time kind of video. As some of you have been asking me, I was once hit by a car, and I kind of wanted to tell that story just because I feel like it's just kind of a part of riding your bike and being a bike person and like being a bike commuter. So I thought I would tell my story. And I might be referencing like the Tumblr post I made that day, so sorry if you like catch me reading this. But a little bit of background. So when I moved to Philadelphia, it was really important for me to learn how to ride a bike in the city. And if you've moved to a city or you've lived in a city your whole life, riding your bike in the city is a little bit more difficult than when you were a kid and you were riding it at the park or riding it on the sidewalk. And my roommate had to teach me how to ride a bike. And we used to have this old, like, piece of crap bike that was in our basement from a previous roommate who I'd, like, never even met. So for a while, that, like, rusted beach cruiser was, like, my bike. And I loved that thing. And then, like, one day that roommate came back and was like, oh, I left my bike here. And it was seriously, like, 3 years later. And my roommate was like, well, it's her bike. You have to give it back. So we were looking for a new bike for me for a while, and I didn't really have the funds to buy a brand new bike, so we were looking on Craigslist. And I still think to this day that my bike was stolen, but we answered a Craigslist ad for this guy. He seemed really cool. He was like in South Philly, and he said that it was his daughter's bike and she had outgrown it. So we got there and he invited us in, and his house was full of bikes. Like wall-to-wall bikes, all sorts of different bikes, and there were no like pictures on the wall or any indication that he like had children at any point. So I was already feeling really weird, like I know what's happening here. And when I was like, oh, can I give the bike a test drive, he was like, okay, but your roommate has to stay here. I was like, okay, family man. And when my roommate was checking out the bike, she was like, oh, this needs to be adjusted, blah, 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 blah. And he, like, was already holding a wrench, and he was like, I'll fix it. So I believe he was in the business of bikes. And for the longest time, I felt really bad riding that bike around, because I was like, I'm going to run into the girl that he stole this from. And he even, like, recommended this terrible lock to us. He was like, you can pay $30 for a kryptonite lock, but they sell this kind of lock at Walmart. And when we looked it up, we were like, he would recommend that lock so he can get his bike back. And I paid like over $100 for that bike, and it was heavy. It was just like really ill-maintained, but at the time it was like all I ever wanted. So I had that bike for a little while, and I used to commute on it all the time. And then one day, the big story happened, and I was hit by a car. So I'm gonna reference this post that I wrote on my Tumblr as least as possible. But so this was March 17th, 2013. Today I was riding my bike to meet up with my friend in Center City, happy as pie to break the 48 hours I had spent inside my house. On the way, a car tried to make a quick left turn opposite of me in traffic and cut me off, forcing me to collide in the back of their car and flip off my bike into traffic. The car kept going, and a group of nurses rushed into the intersection, grabbing me, my bike, my U-lock, and my hat, which had flown off of my head and off of my bike in the collision. Someone else had flagged down the car and blocked his way so he would stop. My legs were jello at this point. I thought to myself, damn it, the first time I got to hang out with my friend, and now I'm gonna be late. Are you okay? Are you okay? Surprisingly, I was fine. My bike had fallen right on my arm in kind of a weird way, but I love a good bruise. But people always say that things like that don't always hurt at first, though. Yeah, I think so. My tights didn't even rip. The nurse holding my hat stood close to me, and the warmth of her genuine interest in my safety compelled me to act civil. The man who hit me approached the gang of us. He couldn't be shy of 80 years old. His neck was red with rash and old age. I had the right of way. Really? Did you? I replied. The nurse spoke for me, and I wiggled my arm a little bit. I put back my hat. I interrupted them in their pure diva hearts. Sir, I had the green light and you were turning left. You're supposed to yield, yeah? I was turning left, but I had the right of way. Two cops approached and the nurses scattered. I should have followed them. I was okay, really. A cop took me one direction and another one took the man who hit me a different direction. This was still a good time for me to leave, but the nurses had me feeling confident. I explained to the cop what happened. I gave them my ID and my real phone number. I text my friend. BRB, got hit by a car. People that old shouldn't drive, the cop engaged me. I tell ya, I see things like this all the time. She scribbled down in her notepad. I smiled, my body still shaking. The second cop came over to us, and my phone started to ring. I pick up the phone, but I don't put it to my head. There's damage done to his vehicle. If you choose to go to the hospital, you'll have to work it out with your insurance or his car insurance company. But I didn't have any insurance. The cop continued, bikes are supposed to yield to cars. So I reply, so wait, this is my fault? And the cop continues, well, miss, because this intersection does not have a green light arrow, bikes are supposed to yield to cars turning left. I said, I was going straight and he cut me off. I didn't have to yield. Those nurses had me feeling like a hero, and now this cop was treating me like I was a fucking crook. Amanda, I hear my friend on the phone. Flee the scene, get out of there. He had heard the whole thing. I looked up, pushed my bike into the street, and jumped on. I coasted 2 blocks and got off, my handlebars crooked, and my seat spun almost all the way around. A construction worker spied me fumbling over my bike and silently stopped me and bent my bike back into position as he passed by. There you go, sweetheart. I was back on my bike as if nothing happened. This is what I learned from all this, and this is what I would have done differently. The moment I realized I was okay, I should have bounced. I understand that it was the initial shock of being hit by a car. However, I was liable for whatever happened to the car, despite my injuries. Fuck a cop who says you have to yield to cars. How could a police officer side with me and then another one tell me it was my fault? I'm on a bike. I'm supposed to be looking out for a car going the opposite direction. How am I supposed to know that it's an intersection without a left turn arrow? I was in the bike lane. Fuck an old man who hits a kid on their bike and keeps going. Nurses are cool. If anything ever happens to me on my bike, I'm out. So that's the story of what happened. To explain it without the monologue, because I used to think I was an author, I was riding down the street, and it was a hill, and there were 3 bikes in front of me. All 3 went through, and then there was a bike behind me. And this guy tried to go left in between me and the bikes who had already went in front because he didn't want to wait for 5 bikes to go past. This intersection had a bike lane, which I had followed, and the direction of traffic had the green. So even though there weren't cars coming, bikes still followed the traffic laws, and I had the right of way. At no point was there a sign or anything that said, like, bikes yield to traffic, none of that. Bikes in Philadelphia have the same rights. Bikes are expected to stop at red lights, bikes are expected to stop at stop signs, and when it's a green light, we get to go. Luckily, my friend who was on the phone had known a little bit more about bikes than me, and when he was like, get out of there, honestly, I just threw my body onto my bike and pushed it away. The cops didn't chase me, and I never got a phone call. One of the main factors of all of this was the old man was driving a Jaguar, and I fucked up his car. My body dragged across the entire trunk of the car, smashed the brake light, and that bike was the heaviest bike I've ever owned, and it scratched everything. So when the cops took my information, they asked me for my car insurance, and I was like, I don't have car insurance, I ride a bike. And they said, in an accident, you need to have proof of insurance, even car insurance as a pedestrian. And I found out later, like, even if I was walking on the street and I got hit by a car, my car insurance would get involved for some reason, but I don't have car insurance. I don't have health insurance. But It was March in Philadelphia, so I was wearing lots of layers, my head was protected, my body was protected. The injuries I sustained from the bike accident were light concussion and bruising up my arm, from my wrist all the way up to my arm. And I did experience like a lot of post-traumatic stress. I couldn't get back on my bike for almost a year. I have a really hard time driving. I had a really hard time driving in a car. I didn't get in a car for almost a year until I met John and we started dating. It was the first time I was ever actively like a passenger in a car from after the accident. Like, I wouldn't get in an Uber, I wouldn't like take you down the street, no taxis, nothing. The only thing I trusted was the subway. Just because I kept like in the heat of the accident, I felt cool and collected and Qcknd and everything like that. But when I got home, I was like, what the fuck happened? I used that bike for like 2 months once everything was chill, but my back wheel was bent so bad that I had to scrap the bike. And it sucked because a lot of my friends were artists at the time and we had all like customized my bike in a really cool way and I couldn't use it anymore. So I was just completely like not about that bike life anymore. I would say like a couple months after the accident, when I worked at Qcknd, the streetwear company, one of my followers from Tumblr came in and he like told me that he heard what happened and everything and that he worked for a bike shop and that he could get me a bike at cost after everything that had happened. So at cost just means like what they would pay to get it from the manufacturer. So I ended up getting this really sick retrospect bike. It was a single speed, which is like way better for bike commuting in my opinion, just because like I don't need all these gears that I don't understand, and Philadelphia is like relatively flat, so I only needed one gear anyway, and it just had a front brake. And I love that bike. It's still my bike that I have right now. Sorry. And it was really cool of him. Like, I never learned like his real name. I only knew his Tumblr handle. If that's ever happened to you, I felt so bad because I was like, thanks, bud. And I bought that from him for like $200, and I love that bike. It's really light, really easy to control, and I mean, it took me a while to get back on the road. And at first I was biking like out of necessity, but like I would ride with John and he would be like, why are you going so slow? Why are you tapping your brakes? Stop tapping your brakes. Stop tapping your brakes. Like, stop it. But it took me so long to like not be afraid to go down hills, not be afraid to like go fast. Like, I would honestly just trot along, and I never knew like it was bad because after my accident I was just like, I can't believe this. So after my accident, one of my Tumblr followers hit me up about like Philadelphia bike rides, and they said that I could continue to press charges, but from my experience, like my friend Jeff, he was in my Pope blog video, he has been in a lawsuit for being struck on his bike for like almost 4 years, and like even though it was completely the guy's fault, they have been investigating Jeff. Like, I remember his lawyer like came to our job and asked like if he actually worked there. Like, it's insane. And honestly, I would still be in the lawsuit today if I would have pursued it, and there's no way that like I ever would have been compensated. Like, I would have had to go to the hospital and pay for it myself, and to get a CAT scan, to get an arm brace, like to get tested for PTSD, like it would have been insane and it would have came out of my pocket. I'm not saying that if you ever get hit by a car to run, but I am, if you're not hurt, this sounds awful. Because I wasn't that hurt, I did bounce. And I got out of there as quick as possible, and when I did meet up with my friend, he was like, yeah, I was hit by this kind of car before and I just left, and I left my bike there. Just because the law is so backed up with like these bike accidents that honestly it's not worth the trouble if you can just go home and sleep it off for like 2 months. I remember I was like just stuck in bed for the longest time, like recovering from my accident. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad because after that I was like, a cab, like fuck the police, like they saw all this happen, and I was really mad at the nurses because they all left when the police came and I never had an eyewitness. So all of these things combined like really didn't work in my favor. Like maybe if I would have had a witness, maybe if the nurses would have stayed. But I am thankful for the nurses because they pulled me out of the street and they did stop the guy who was a total loser. Like, if you're 80 years old and someone's telling you like you just hit me with your car, you probably did. But that's the story of the time I got hit by a car on my stolen Craigslist bike in Philadelphia. I can't say that I've taken much of a lesson from this experience, but since then, Philadelphia has added a lot more bike-friendly laws to the city. They've added a lot more bike lanes, and they have been redoing some of the bike lanes to make them more obvious because honestly, I probably get bumped or like obstructed by a car every time I ride, and it's really bad. Some of the bike lanes in Philadelphia are share the road bike lanes, and I can honestly tell you that people are not interested in sharing the road. Even biking to work every day, there used to be these window cleaners called like Jenkintown window cleaners, and their emblem is like a very copyrighted picture of Spider-Man like cleaning a window. And one time the driver ran me off the road and called me fat. So I was stuck pressed up against a fence and he called me fat. And I was like, share the road, man. And then later everyone was like, call Jenkintown window cleaner and get him in trouble. And I was like, maybe I'm fat. But if you work for Jenkintown window cleaner, that's for you. Anyway, I love you guys. Let me know if you're interested in any of these bike videos. It has been requested for me to do like a riding in the city bike video, but I did want to get it out there that I was hit by a car and I live to tell the tale. But I didn't get hurt that bad. I have had friends, like I said, who've just been destroyed by cars. One of my old coworkers, he was like hit by a car so bad. Anyway, yeah, thank you for watching my video and listening to my story, and thanks for subscribing. Let me know if you remember when I was hit by a bike, if you've been around this long, and let me know your story down below if you have ever experienced something like that, or, you know, if the police ever betrayed you. But thanks for watching. Love you guys. Bye.